Hi, Sapo here. In this video, I'm going to give a quick demo of how you can get started creating your first test in DoesQA. So, assuming you've got a new account, you're going to be on a view like this. This is Flow's view, and as you can see, there's an example flow, but we're going to jump straight into creating a new one. So, I'm going to call this Airbnb because that's the site we're going to be picking on, Airbnb search. Once you create your flow, you land straight into the flow builder, and you can see there's a couple of nodes to help you get started. We're going to go into this open node and we're going to set airbnb.co.uk, and we're going to leave it on Chrome desktop for now. And there's a couple of comment nodes, and there's this check title that we just don't need. I've got Airbnb open, and I've refreshed the page a couple of times, and it looks like the cookie consent down here is the last item that loads on the page. So what I'm going to do is we're going to bring up our inspector, and we're going to first just wait until this is loaded. So I'm just copying this test ID, but it could be any CSS XPath selector. We just want to make sure that this page is loaded. So on the left here, we've got all our nodes, that we call this the node library. And I'm just going to drag this wait for in, and you can see that there's lots of different variations hidden within each node. We don't have any elements yet, so we're just going to call this cookie, and we're going to select test ID, and I'm just going to paste in the test ID that I copied. Next, we want to type in a search. So this is the where input, and it also has a test ID, so I'm just going to copy that. We're going to drag the set node in, wire that up, create a new element, search input, test ID, and we're going to send Key West. We could actually use values from the value store here, so we could use a search term that's previously been saved or something like that, but just for this quick demo, we're going to keep stuff hard-coded. Now, once we send values to this, we have a couple of options. We can either click this, or we could even use the keyboard and do a down arrow and then a return. But one of the beautiful things about Does is we can do both within the exact same test without any duplication. So right at the bottom here, we've got some utility nodes, and one of the things we can do is we can name this test path that we're about to create. So I'll call this mouse, I'll duplicate this, and we'll call this one keyboard. And then on the mouse side, we'll drag in a touch node, we'll wire this up, and we will find out what this is here. Yeah, so another test ID. This is really good. Not all sites have a test ID, but you could use CSS selectors, XPath, or visible text. And then on the keyboard side, we're going to drag in the set node, but one of its variants is actually send keys. And because we will actually have the focus already on the input, we can then select that we want to do a down arrow and then an enter. And we'll wire this one up. And then what will happen is when we run this test, there will be two test cases created. Now, both of these, once we have this selected, we then move on to check-in. Calendars are quite difficult typically to work with and end up with quite gnarly selectors. This is probably going to be the same case. To make our life a little bit easier, we're going to ignore the current month, because of course whenever we run this test, we might be on, there might only be a day left of the current month. So I'm just going to select directly from the next month, and I think what I'm going to do is select the 5th and the 10th, Okay, so this is the selector that I've come up with. So we're going to drag in a touch node. We're going to wire it up to both parts because we want our branch to rejoin and both of them to continue on down this route. And we'll create a new element called next month 5th. It's a CSS selector, and I can paste that in there. Now we're going to duplicate this node, but just before I go into edit it, we're going to jump over to the elements view, and this is where you can manage basically your page objects. You can see how many times they're used and what kind of selector they are. We're going to duplicate this one, and we're going to rename it to the 10th, and then I'm just going to edit this bit in our selector. Great. Let's go back to our flow, and we just need to now select this from the drop down. Okay, so that gets us to this point, and it's not automatically moving on, so we're going to want to make that happen. So let's find out. That looks good. It's another test ID. We'll duplicate this and create an element for it and touch that. That gets us here. Great. So I'm just going to duplicate this one, and we're going to make it so that we add 2 adults. So to do that, we'll just touch this button twice. And then finally, we just need to hit search. We could do this by hitting return. We could do this by clicking, and we can of course branch and do both, and that will take our number of test cases in this flow from 2 to 4. But in this case, we're just going to click it. Okay, and let's do that in our other tab. So we'll add a wait for, and then we're going to want to validate that we're on the page that we expect to be on. So what I'm going to do is select this. So that's called little search. Again, it's a test ID. And we're going to go down to our runner nodes and add a wait for node in. And we're going to create little search. And then we want to verify that we're on the page we expect to be on. And so just looking at this URL, there's a bit here which will be specific to the test that we're doing. So we're checking the address, and you can see there's lots of different ways of setting up your checks, and we're going to just say check contains. This isn't the best possible test that could be created. I'm just sort of demonstrating how much you can do and how fast it is to do it. And then we will check that a number of values are appearing in this little search as well. So we've got Key West, we've got this 5 to 10, which I will just copy the value out of. We don't want the month because when we run this next month, it will move on from May to June. So I'm just going to copy that, and we're going to put a couple of text nodes in. We've already created the element, so the more you do in Does, the faster it becomes, because you're just building your elements and they're just using them again and again. And we're just going to say contains, and we'll start off with the Key West, and then we'll duplicate that and make sure that it also contains 5 to 10. And then we'll duplicate it again, and it also said 2 guests. Okay, so we could stop there. But one thing I'd like to do is just show that you can forget this whole inspector and prototype your tests even faster without test IDs or CSS selectors, and that's by using visible text. So in this case, I'm just going to click beachfront, and the way I'm going to do that is I'll still create an element for it even though we're just going to click the visible text. That way we can come back later and change it to a test ID or a CSS selector or an XPath. So after we've done those checks, we're going to have a touch node, and this touch node is going to click a new element, and we're going to call this filter and beachfront. Visible text. And we typically advise against using just time-based pauses, but in this case we want to end the test here, and I just want to make sure that there's a little bit of time on the video, so we're just going to add in a 5-second pause. So before I run this, this is a test that we've just created. It's on this infinite canvas. We have a branch, and it reconnects back. So this is 2 separate test cases. There's no limit to what you can do in terms of branching. You don't have to connect back up. We could take this one over here. If you end up creating steps that you want to use in a completely different flow, then you can select those, and you can actually create a group out of those. And then that way, wherever you need that sort of create user, log in as a test user, then you can have your own nodes created in the node library and just drag them in. And if you need to update them, again, you only need to update them in one place, the same as the elements. Values are hard coded in this test, but you can set your values in the value store and then overwrite them in CI/CD. There's really no limit to the possibilities, and of course you've got all of these nodes, and we're constantly adding new ones. Like generate file, and you can also download files and then re-upload a file that you've downloaded from another place. We've got SFTP, aliasing. You can even do GraphQL queries and send messages to Slack. So we're constantly adding more and more nodes. But if there's ever anything that you are missing, all you got to do is let us know. So let's hit run on this. And as I mentioned before, there's 2 unique test cases, and so that's why we see 2 unique runs here. Both of them are going to create their own individual runner, and if you have the parallel runner capabilities in your plan, then we can scale up infinitely. You can have hundreds of tests all running at the exact same time. If that sounds a little bit scary and your infrastructure might not be able to handle it, not a problem at all. In the settings, you can set what you want your own max concurrency to be. And if you're on a starter plan and only have access to one runner, one test will run and then the next one will start. So I'm just going to fast forward for a second, and then I'll show you the results to these 2 tests. Okay, I'm back, and our test is about to finish up. So you can see, because we use that name node, what would actually happen if we used it multiple times. You'd actually see it going through the different stages, and so therefore you can see exactly which branch you're on. Our keyboard one is just finished, and we can see that that's going to be a pass, and our mouse one we've also got the results for. So just having a quick look at this, we can open it up and we can see every single step, and these are essentially the steps to recreate. So if we were to have an issue, then we can just send a developer a link to this test case, and they have everything they could possibly want. They can see what selector we're using, they have a screenshot for every step, they can see how long it took, particularly on these wait for nodes, that it waited for 2 seconds before it could continue. we've put all the selectors in, and you can even edit these so in line. So if we wanted to on the next run try a different selector that's a little bit more concise, or go from a visible text to a CSS or XPath, then we could do that right from here. You can go all the way through, and we can even see here that we have ended up on beachfront properties, so that's using that visible text selector. I'll leave you with the video that was created. That's really it for this video. Go sign up an account and you can see that you can create amazing tests in just minutes. If you do ever get stuck, then you can reach out to us. We pride ourselves on our support, and we will do absolutely everything to figure out the problem, and we can even provide examples inside your account if you'd like us to. So go sign up and have fun.